So it is my great privilege and honor today to introduce our first speaker, Xyza Cruz Bacani, to the stage.
Great to see you.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin, for introducing me. Good morning, everyone. Come on, let's start this fun FUJIKINA 2022. And I'm Xyza Cruz Bacani, and I'm a Filipino photographer. Woohoo! Currently based in New York, and that person in the photo is me. I want to take you back to my journey of becoming that person in front of everyone right now. In 2013, I was working as a domestic worker in Hong Kong, taking care of 6 children for a beautiful family, and moonlighting as a street photographer. For the first time, I saw the Fujifilm X100, and I vividly remembered posting on my social media asking if anyone is in need of a kidney, because I have a spare one. Luckily for me, I don't need to sell my kidney, and no one bought it, because in 2014, I finally saved enough money to buy my first Fujifilm X-E2. I needed a camera at that time that has interchangeable lens because I was figuring out what I want to do in photography. I did portraits, I photographed flowers, I photographed random objects, but street photography is the one that I really like. I was really drawn into street photography. The reason for loving street photography was because of my mother, Georgia. My mother is also working in Hong Kong as a domestic worker at that time, and she worked 7 days a week. She really never went out. So she never saw Hong Kong, the vibrant people, the activities, the beautiful scenes, and through my photographs, she saw what I saw. I became my mother's eyes. As I continue photographing the street of Hong Kong, it caught the attention of New York Times. The amazing David Gonzalez sent me a message asking me about my work and who I am, or who I was. And I vividly remember his beautiful message. And my life changed when the New York Times Lens blog published a profile about me. It was also the first time that I earned money from photography. So during that time, Fujifilm saw my potential and talent, if I may say. Well, and because they saw that we can work together, they invited me to be part of their ambassadorship program. And they threw a big welcome party for me in the Philippines. Aren't they great in making us all special? Do you feel special right now? I do. And as I continued photographing Hong Kong and being part of the ambassadorship program, we are called ex-photographers now, by the way, but once in a while, for the giggles, I still call myself an ambassador because it sounds so dope. And I continued photographing Hong Kong and its people. And during that time as well, I transitioned into documentary photography. The reason I transitioned to documentary photography was I was realizing that I am in a very unique position to tell the story of migrant workers. And in 2015, I finally came to New York because I got into a fellowship by Magnum Foundation, and that's the first time that I studied photography because I was self-taught during all those times that I was exploring photography. So I came to New York and started photographing different stories of migration. That was the time where I transitioned into being a ninja, a street photographer who photographed and then leave, into someone who actually and actively listens to people's stories. I became a full-blown storyteller. I photographed different stories of human labor trafficking in New York, like the story of Daisy. She was separated from her children and was not able to see them for a long time because she was trafficked here in New York. I told stories about runaway migrants in Singapore. I photographed their intimate moments with dignity. I photographed climate refugees in Indonesia, and I photographed workers from plantations. I came to New York again in 2017 and visited James Estrin. He's a wonderful mentor. And while we were having a conversation, he encouraged me on publishing a book about migration. At first, I was actually scared. I was very unsure because, as I was very green back then, and there's some level of insecurity, but he pushed me in the right direction. And in 2017, We Are Like Air was born at the elevator of the Times building. We are like air because migrant workers are like air. They are important, but mostly unseen. They are the backbones of a society that usually doesn't listen to them. It is the most scary project that I started with because before I was photographing stories of other people, but this time I was photographing something personal, something that is too close and something that is painful. It's like looking at myself in a mirror and I'm not liking what I'm seeing, because I am photographing my own family. I photographed the story of my mother, Georgia. She's been trafficked to Singapore and moved to Hong Kong, and she left me when I was 8 years old. When I was photographing her, it healed a lot of wounds that the trauma of separation has given us. The generational trauma of migration. I also photographed my father, who is a farmer in the Philippines. And of course, I photographed their love. It is very important for me to highlight the love of my parents who endured long-distance relationship for almost 3 decades. They were separated miles apart, but still, they remain in love with each other. I am also a hopeless romantic. That's why I need to photograph love. I photograph the tenderness of my father towards his grandchildren, the tenderness that I was looking for when I was a child, but we were all trying to survive back then. so I wasn't able to get that much, but I saw him tender towards my nieces. I photographed my mother showing tenderness towards other people's grandchildren, something that she cannot do for her own grandchildren, but the love that she was not able to give, she gave it to others. And of course, I photographed three generations of our family. This is one of my favorite images because my mother only comes home once every 2 years to see our family. She usually stays 2 to 3 weeks. But at this moment, I was holding a Fujifilm GFX medium format camera. They were oblivious of my presence because we all know unconsciously that these moments are fleeting. They were sharing a wonderful bond, and I stood, actually we were sharing, but I stood on top of the bed and started photographing them. They completely ignored me. And of course, composition-wise, it's beautiful. And I also photographed 7 different stories of migration in Hong Kong. Of course, I cannot deny that I have to tell stories of abuse, like Shirley. Shirley, who suffered a 3rd-degree burn on her back because her employer back then allegedly put a pot of boiling hot soup on her shoe rack. I also photographed delight. It's important to show that people like me knows how to be happy, that we know what delight means. I photographed joy and strength, like these 3 Indonesian migrant workers who just came back from a protest to fight for their rights during Labor Day. I also photographed families who accepted their domestic workers as part of their family. In the corner, you can see Lola Jo. Lola means grandma, who took care of Ada when she was 3 years old until she got married. Jo retired, went back to the Philippines, but when Ada got married to Michael and they had a baby, Jo unretired and went back to Hong Kong to take care of their baby. It was a full circle. I also photographed the bond of mothers and their daughters who are trying to keep the love between them even though they were separated. There were a lot of joys from children when they received boxes of chocolates and gifts from their mothers, but then the presence of their mother is the one thing that they crave the most. I photograph children who were suffering from missing their own mothers because they grow up without them. The book finally came out in 2019, early 2019, late 2018. And Fujifilm supported my first book. We did a lot of exhibitions in Hong Kong, in Manila, in Shanghai, in New York. I think we did in Los Angeles. It's too much, I can't even remember. We printed a lot of images and presented it in installations with text written on top of the print. We also did public pasting of images around New York in collaboration with different schools and private individuals. The aim of this project was to have a conversation between the public and the migrant workers. And I did an installation using a Fujifilm Instax camera planted with succulents. because I always see migrant workers like succulents, very resilient. And same with the Fujifilm Instax prints, they can last long. And when I did this, I was actually praying, please don't die on me. Because the first succulent that I ever had actually died on me. So we did this installation, and all the plants were given away to those who came to the exhibition. And before you all start wondering, I do photograph in colors, especially during the pandemic. When everyone was staying home, I was in the Philippines because I was stuck there. I decided to go out and tell the stories of my hometown. It was the time that I am starting to explore a place that I have left when I was just 19 years old. I photographed a home birth story for NPR, and it was the first time that I saw a mother give birth to a child. I'm gonna be very honest, my knees went jelly when I saw the birth. And then this photo always reminds me to worship my own mother. And we should all worship our mothers because of what they went through just for us to exist. I was able to access hospitals. It was a scary time, but luckily I was able to access hospitals. I photographed healthcare workers during the beginning of the pandemic who are going out serving their communities even without proper protection for CNN. I photographed portraits of volunteers who bravely went out and helped their communities during that time. I followed the movement of vegetables from farm to table for National Geographic Society. And it was one of those moments where I realized how important agriculture is. Because when the food is on our table, we don't really think about it. But because of this story, I have so much respect to people who try to feed us. These are the people that produce food for us. It took a village for me to be here. It took a lot of support from gracious people, from Fujifilm, from friends who are here today. And all I know is I'm very grateful and filled with love that I'm able to fulfill my full potential as a storyteller because of that support. The support that I receive is making me a better ancestor to my descendants. And by the way, if anyone has an extra GFX2, I still have that spare kidney if you need it. Thank you so much, and I hope you like my presentation. Enjoy today.